All right, so today we're going to go over comping properties for wholesalers. So we're going to walk through a number of things today, and by the end of this presentation, you should understand how to comp, what you're looking at, and be confident in your comping abilities. So quick overview. So we're going to cover why comping matters, the 5 pillars of a great comp, 3 tools we use, finding the ARV step by step, example ARV breakdown, estimating repairs, which we went over in the MAO training, but we'll just go over that again. Calculating the MAO, formula adjustments, using comps with sellers, why it's important, why comping is important on the dispo side and with cash buyers. And then there's some practice for you guys to do, as well as just some final tips. Make sure as you go through this, obviously this is a recording, so make sure as you go through this, you write down questions. I'll be able to hop on a call with you afterwards, and we can go over any questions you have. All right, so why comping matters. So comping is the foundation of all smart offers in real estate investing. So it sets the foundation for every deal. When an investor or a wholesaler for that matter, because really what a wholesaler is we're bringing a deal to an investor. So we're an extension of that investor, and we need to make sure the deal kind of passes a sniff test as like, hey, this is a deal, the numbers make sense. So one, it determines how much we can offer to a seller. If we don't get this number right, we're going to have low margins for investors, or we're going to lose the deals because we're not going to be able to move them. It helps us justify our numbers to both sellers and buyers, right? If we can walk through the process and say, hey, this property's selling at X, we need to do this much work to it. We really need to pick it up at Y. It gives us a basis in fact and not emotion. So we just want to make sure that we get the ARV right. Because if you remember correctly, the way you calculate an offer, and this is just a quick rule of thumb, is you take the ARV, which is the comped price, you subtract somewhere between 65 to 75%, you subtract the repairs, and that's the price the investor would pay for the property. Now, one step further is the price we would pay. We add our fee, or we subtract our fee as well. So let's say 25,000, we would subtract that as well, and that's how we'd arrive at the number. So next, so how do you get a great comp? So these are the 5 pillars of a great comp, and every single deal you should look at these 5 things to put together a good comp or a great comp. So first off is similar property style. So ideally, you're comparing a ranch home to a ranch home, or a 2-story to a 2-story, or a brick bungalow to a brick bungalow. You also want to avoid mixing a frame versus a brick unless no other options exist. So it's much better to compare a brick ranch house to, excuse me, a brick bungalow than it is to compare a brick bungalow to a frame bungalow. You can make adjustments on any of these things. So comping is part science and part art, right? There's not going to be an exact replica of the property. So what you do is you make adjustments based on bed bath count, you make adjustments based on square footage, you make adjustments based on finishes. So these are all things you need to look at when comping properties. So next, similar bed bath count. So ideally you want to aim for the same number of beds and baths, and then adjust slightly if square footage and layouts are nearly identical. So for example, if you have a property that's a 2-bed, 1-bath, and you find there's no 2-bed, 1-bath in the area, you would compare it to a 3-bed, 1-bath and what that sells for. And then you would make an adjustment down, saying, okay, I'm going to take off $15,000 off the sale price of the 3-bed, 1-bath to the 2-bed, 1-bath in order to arrive at a number. Next, we have similar square footage. Typically, we want to stay within about 20% of the subject property. So if you have a 1,000 square foot home, you want to be either at 800 or 1,200. So 200 on either side. Now, sometimes, again, you're not going to be able to find a property similar, so you might take a bigger reduction. The other thing you want to be cautious of is finished basements or attics that affect the livable space. So these are all things to take into account. There isn't necessarily a rule of thumb. Like, for example, the bed bath count, like if there's an extra bed, depending if you go from a 2-1 to a 3-1, that increases more value than if you go from a 3 to a 4 or a 4 to a 5. So usually you're looking at about $10,000 from one bedroom to the next, but it really depends on the price point as well. Same thing with square footage. There's not really like, hey, there's 500 more square feet, so it's worth this much more. You just need to look at the total picture of comps in the area to come with an accurate comp. Next, proximity. This is huge. You want to stay ideally within half a mile radius, or you could do 1 mile for less dense areas. You want to stay in the same neighborhood, school district, and zip code when possible, including actually the same city as well. So at points, you'll have a property that's right on the border of south suburb. I don't know. Just pick two suburbs that are right next to each other. You ideally don't want to go into the other suburb. You want to stay in that same city, even if it's zero point 0.2 miles away and it's just across the street. Ideally, you're staying in that same city, but you can use these other comps that maybe don't fit exactly as data points to triangulate the value for your property. And then last is just recency. So the sold date. Ideally, you're looking at comps ideally within 3 months. You can go out to 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, but the closer the better. And then just go a little bit further out if you're not getting the right data. So usually what I'll do is I'll look at comps sold in the last 6 months within half a mile radius. And then if I can't find anything, I might go a little bit further out. If I can't find anything, I might go a little bit longer out in terms of time, so 9 months, a year. So you just need to play around with it, but ideally you're doing 6 months within a half a mile radius. If you have 2 to 3 comps that match all five, you're going to have a very solid foundation for your ARV. So one other thing I want to talk about is the reason we use these 5 things is because that's what appraisers use. So at the end of the day, you want to be able to use comps that support your price, because when you go to sell your price, and this is from an investor's perspective, when you go to sell your property, the buyer might pay whatever they want, but at the end of the day, the person who decides the value of the home is going to be the appraiser. And the appraiser is going to make sure that the house is worth what you're selling it for. And they're going to look at other properties in the area, because all the appraiser is doing is they are the check for the bank to make sure they're not lending $300,000 on a house that's worth 150. Because if they need to take that house back or it goes into foreclosure, they want to make sure that their money's protected. So that's why this is important. And this is the same approach that the appraisers use when evaluating properties for a bank. All right, so just to recap, so within 0.25 miles, you could go out to 0.5, even further, but ideally you want to stay within, I usually use half a mile, and I'll change this slide to adjust for that. You want to go sold in the last 3 months ideally, but you could go further out if there's no comps, the same property type. So you don't want to do a single family versus a two flat. You want to do frame to frame, brick to brick, similar property style, brick bungalow to the same, Cape Cod to the same. Obviously, if there's not similar style homes, you would just use, you could compare a Cape Cod to a brick bungalow if the square footage is similar, but just take into account the difference in the style of home and what that might mean for the value. So if you see that brick bungalow sell for significantly higher than Cape Cods, you have to make an adjustment, and you can't say, okay, now the Cape Cod, I'm just going to consider it a brick bungalow and count it as the same. You want to make sure that similar bed bath count. You want to make sure obviously similar square footage, and then you want to look at the condition or adjust based on the renovation, the finishes, because some you'll have a rental grade, which isn't as nice, just like kind of like a clean spruce up and paint, versus a full on flip where you're going to have brand new everything. So keep that in mind as well. So free tools to use to comp to get a better idea. You can use Zillow, Redfin. So you'll be able to look at sold properties in the last 6 months within a certain mile radius. You can use Google Maps just to get a better feel for the neighborhood. So look up the address, walk up and down the street, just get a sense of things. You can use the assessors, which will tell you the lot size, property details, tax information is going to be important in some of these suburbs. So the taxes on a $180,000 home, some taxes might be $10,000, others might be $6,000. That's a huge difference, right? It's $4,000 a year. It's an extra $300 or so on the payments. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then we have Google Street View, Google Maps, same thing. All right, so finding the ARV step by step. So how do we do this quickly? So we'll search the subject property on Zillow or Redfin. We'll find 3 to 5 sold comps nearby that match that key criteria. We'll adjust for bed, bath, condition, square footage, and then we'll basically average or triangulate sold prices of the best comps, and then this will be your ARV. All right, so I'll put a video walkthrough in at this point, and I'll do a live kind of comping session just to show you what it would look like, how you would go about doing it. So I'll insert that here. All right, so we're going to comp a property on Redfin. So one, you're going to need a Redfin account. So if you don't have it, just create one. So this is a property that we just got under contract. So we need to figure out the ARV on it. So first thing, you would just come to Redfin, type in the address, it would pull it up. It would show you the property. So just looking at the pictures, clean property. This was from 3 years ago, so we're not quite sure of the shape today, but gives you an idea. Older kitchen, hardwood floors, older bathroom, or need some updating, just vanity. Could be rental grade today, but yeah, I mean, looking at the bathroom could use some sprucing up potentially. So first, we want to just get an idea. So we have a 2-bed, 2.5 bath, 1,600 square foot home, right? So what you could do is first just look it up, go to Street View, just get an idea of the neighborhood, right? We're going to ask them about the neighborhood, what it's like in Elgin, but looks like a pretty nice neighborhood on a little cul-de-sac. Well taken care of, pride of ownership. So we know that, right? So that's one. Another thing you can do is you can just go to, I think Elgin is in Cook County. Let's see. 881 Dandridge and Elgin. Let's see. Okay. So this is the Cook County Property Tax Portal. So this will just tell us some additional information if we were missing. The owner, Simelia Smallwood, who we talked to. So we have the lot size at 5427. The building square feet matches what's on Redfin. So one thing to just be careful about, it's not on a property like this, but a lot of times square footage can be wrong. So agents will just count basements, they'll count things that aren't typically counted in the square footage of a home. So usually we'll confirm in the assessors that it's the correct square footage. We'll be able to see the tax amount for the year. So 6,000 last year, probably going to be about 7 this year. See if there's any exemptions on the property. See if there's any sort of tax sales on the property, and then any sort of refunds. You can see here documents. There's a mechanics lien against the property as of last year, so she probably got some work done and then didn't pay them, so they put a mechanics lien on the property. So what that means is when we go to close, this is going to have to be paid off for her to close. Okay, so then you have the estimated property value. This doesn't mean a lot. This is just what the assessors calculate into that. Every now and then, owners will be like, well, I'm assessed at 226, so that's the value of my home. So we'll teach you how to deal with that objection. But let's go back to the property. So we're here. So now we need to find similar properties that have sold. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on this map here. You're going to click on this map. And then down here, if you can see past my face, down here is going to be nearby homes for sale. So you can see here, the house is on Cold Spring, right? Or actually on Dandridge, but Dandridge and Cold Spring. So we're going to click on nearby homes for sale. So Dandridge and Cold Spring. So the house is right over here. If you could see my mouse. Now what we want to do is we want to go to, so here you could do a list, you could do a split list and map, or you could just do the map. So let's do both. What you want to do is you want to go to, so right now this is for sale, right? So you can do, we want to see what's sold in the area first. So last 3 months, let's go last 6 months. So in the last 6 months, you have property here, you have a few over here, you have one here, and one here. So in filters, if you wanted, because ours, remember, is a 2-bed, let me go back here. Ours is a 2-bed, 2.5 bath, right? So let's say we want, we want a 2-bed, we want at least 2 baths. And then we want, it's a townhouse, right? Townhouse slash condo. So we have sold in the last 6 months. You could do, you could even sort by square footage if you want. You can sort by garage spots. There's all these different filters you could sort by. But let's just keep it here because we're in such a small area, and let's see what pops up. Okay, so you see a few fell off, right? There were the 2 houses over here, I believe, that fell off. So we really have 4 houses kind of in this area, right? So let's look at this one. All right. So this is a very good comp, right? So 881 Dandridge, 885 Dandridge. This sold in January of 2025. So same thing, 2-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. Remember ours, 2-bed, 2.5, 1,600 square feet. So we're in that 20% range. This sold for 285,000. Now, this doesn't have pictures, so they probably took down the pictures on the listing. So what I would do here is I would go here and just look this up and see if there's another website that's going to have the pictures. So this doesn't have it. So let's go back. All right, so realtor.com has it. So this is why you look at other websites to see. So let's see what the pictures look like. All right, so looking at the pictures, nothing special. This is probably as is condition, right? It's not a flipped property. You have older kitchen cabinets. You have probably granite countertops, but this is not something that a flipper came in to redo. Kitchen's older, flooring, vinyl flooring, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but bathrooms, not really updated. Laundry room, smaller upstairs, carpet in the bedrooms. Again, outdated bathroom, right? This isn't a bathroom up to 2025 standards. Same thing with this bathroom. So this gives us a pretty good idea that our property in as is condition would probably sell, depending on if it looks like this, somewhere between 270 to 285. Now let's go back and see if there's other properties that we can use. So that's a good comp. Let's look at this one. So this is a 2-bed, 2-bath, 1,300 square foot home. And this sold for 290 in March. So literally 2 weeks ago, this sold. This as well, like nothing special here, right? This isn't a flipped property. Kitchen has just looks like painted cabinets. It has Formica. So the Formica countertops, it's clean. It was cleaned out, but maybe painted. Bathroom older. Yeah, bathroom again, same thing, older, clean, but nothing special. And this sold for 290. So we have 2 comps. We have one at 290. We have one at 285. Let's look at this one. 2-bed, 2-bath, or 2-bed, 2.5 bath, 1,500. Sold in December of 2024, so 4 months ago. So again, nothing special. Kitchen with Formica countertops, not flipped. probably rental grade, I would describe this as. Uh, Bathrooms, again, aren't really updated. So nothing really special here. And we have one at what, one at 285, one at 280, and then this one sold at 290. So we can be pretty confident here that as is condition or not updated is selling somewhere between 285 and 290. Now, one thing that we can also look at is we could look at what's for sale, just to kind of like triangulate see if there's anything that is a little bit nicer, a little bit more fixed up that we could get an idea on. So you have this property, 733 Bent Ridge, that's active at 305. So it's seemingly a little bit above the market where the market's at. Let's see if there's anything. It's updated. No, not really updated. Kitchen cabinets aren't updated. Formica countertops. So nothing special here. Again, bathrooms not updated, right? So they're trying to sell this seemingly a little bit above the market. It's active. It's been on the market for 4 days. They're probably trying to just push the envelope a little bit, see if the market's moved and price it a little high, but they're going to settle around 290 like the other properties. So we have a very good idea that these properties in Elgin, these townhomes, are selling for somewhere between 280 to 290. So we can be confident that we would be able to get that for just a clean property. Now, if you remember, the what we're really trying to figure out is what's the ARV. So this one is a good example because this one's a little bit harder. There's really nothing that is nicer, is updated, that's sold. So what we want to do is kind of expand our search a little bit, see if there's anything that gives us a little bit more information. So on the other side of Summit, you have a two bed, two bath that's contingent at 290. Again, not updated, right? So it's in line with those other properties that are selling between 285 and 290. Let's go back to sold properties. Let's go 1 year back and see what we can find. So there's a lot more units in this area that have sold in the last year, right? Let's look at this one, south of Summit. So this is a two bed, two bath, one level living at its finest. Let's see if this one's updated because this one seemingly sold for significantly more than anything else that we're seeing. So let's see why. All right, no pictures. All right. So just kind of picking up where we left off. So we were looking at properties to try to figure out what the ARV is once it's fixed up. So one of the properties that we found was this property at where is it? 1302 Dancing Bear Lane. It's a two bed, two bath. So let's get a sense of the inside. So vinyl flooring, not necessarily a flip, but nicer cabinets, nicer probably granite or quartz countertop, nicer bathrooms for sure, more updated bathrooms closer to 2025 standards. The if you remember from the other properties, they were more just like standard subway tile, older, uh, nice built-ins. Which really, when you look at properties, you're really looking at the kitchen, the bathrooms, really the kitchens and bathrooms, and then obviously everything else matters like the flooring, paint. But when you look at this property, you can tell that this is just done nicer. This also has a basement, which we'd have to look into this and figure out if that's not counted in the square footage because it gives you additional livable space. So that could account for why this sold significantly higher. Uh, but I mean, in looking at the property itself, I think we get a pretty good idea that one, we need to look at again the basement, and it's south of a main street, Summit, so we need to see if it's in a different school district. But if you look at the cluster of properties in this area, you're really in the 285 to 290 range, right? So let's see if there's anything else that we're missing. So we looked at that one, looked at this, didn't look at this one. Let's see, but outdated 275, right? 287. We looked at this one, 285. Not updated. I think we might have looked at that one. So really, as is values are 285 to 290. And then you have this one outlier seemingly at 358. So in terms of an ARV, I would probably put the ARV. I wouldn't want to go all the way up to 360. If we can get to that number, great. I just need to kind of evaluate more. While we're doing this, let's just look at this one. So one level living at its finest, excellent location tucked away at the end of a cul-de-sac, quick access to I-90, private side entry, breakfast bar, recess, cozy living room, fireplace, blah, blah, blah. Remodeled hall bath, a new double sink vanity, marble pattern tile floor, new fixtures, custom tile work, gracious size secondary bedroom with accent millwork, finished Elgin basement with a rec room. Okay. So the big thing here is we need to figure out if the basement is part of this square footage, because that might turn this 1388 into 2000 of livable square footage. And if you look at some of these other properties, like 881 Dandridge, it has 1600 square feet, but it doesn't, if I remember correctly, this one doesn't have a basement. So that's something that we need to figure out. So yeah, so in terms of an ARV, I mean, you're looking at like 285 to 290 in terms of as is value. And then you have one comp that seems to be significantly nicer. This one over on Dancing Bear that has 1388 square foot. I need to dig into that a bit more, but just based on what I'm seeing, let's look at this. You have a 370 that sold last year. One more 385. That's a 4.2.5. Yeah, so ARV, I'd probably say somewhere between 325 to 355 fixed up. Just given that, these are 285 as is, and these probably need 40 grand worth of work. Uh, yeah, so I mean, I could see a 360. I just want to dig into that. And typically, I like to just be a bit more conservative than not. So I'd probably underwrite it at like a 330 ARV. But if I can get another, 20, 30 grand on it, I'd be very happy. So that's what I would look at. So just to recap, looking at about 280 to 290 as is value. Now we haven't seen the inside of the property, so maybe it's beat up. So maybe it goes for like 250 to 260. But yeah, just kind of looking at everything that's moving 280 to 290, feel safe with a low end ARV, I would say of 320, with kind of where this one's at 358. All right, so example ARV breakdown. This is very simple, but this is basically how it would work. You have a 3-bed, 1-bath, 1,200 square foot brick ranch in West Lawn. What you'd want to do is, and you can see here, is they covered so you have 1190 square feet, 1210, and 1180. And one sold for 240, one sold for 235, one sold for 245. So we can be confident that if we were to buy this property, rehab this property, on the back end, when we go to sell, we'd be confident that we could get 240, all things being equal, and that our finishes, our rehab quality is as good as these other three. All right, so estimating repairs. So this was in the MAO training as well, but just quick guide to ballpark repair costs. So 15 to 25 is just like kind of a light rehab. You're painting, you're doing floors, you're doing like a minor kitchen upgrade. Medium, you're starting to get into redoing kitchens, redoing baths, some windows. And heavy, you're looking at, uh, you know, touching bigger items in the house. So roof, HVAC, plumbing, a full gut. Now, sometimes the for heavy, it could be significantly more depending on the siding, the foundation, the amount of work. So heavy can go up to, I'd say 100 grand, or sorry, 100, maybe 100 a square foot. It really just depends on the condition of the property. We've bought some real junkers that require much more work. So as an example, this 1,200 square foot home that we just looked at, if it was a medium rehab, you're looking at 35 a square foot, so it'd be $42,000 to repair. So calculating MAO, we had another training on this, but MAO again, max allowable offer is the highest price you can offer a seller and still leave room for your assignment fee while making the deal attractive to a fix and flip buyer or a buy and hold investor. So the basic formula is the MAO equals the ARV. So let's say it's a 240 number, which we have down here as an example, times the investment threshold minus the repairs. So investment threshold, 70% for most markets. It varies by the buyer, the risk, the market conditions, the neighborhood, the type of property. And then repairs, obviously, just like, hey, the cost to bring the property up to 2025 conditions. So in the example we had talked about, if you have a 240 ARV, you have a 42K repair estimate, you have an investment threshold of 70%, you would take 240 times 0.7 minus 42, and one comes out to 126, which is the number that an investor would need to pick up this property to feel confident that he would make money on it. Okay. So why do we do 70%? So it leaves a 30% margin for the buyer profit, which is somewhere between 10 to 20%, and then also taking into account the holding costs. So these are going to be buying costs, agent fees, closing costs, and that's typically 10 to 15%. So you can see why some people are more comfortable buying at 75%, others want to buy at 65%, because they want that profit margin for them to be higher or lower, depending on their risk tolerance, how often they do this, if they're professionals and they do 1 to 2 flips a month, or if they're just they do, it's just like a husband and wife and they do 1 to 2 flips a year, they're going to probably want a bigger spread. So if you want to add your assignment fee, subtract it from the MAO. So let's say you want to make 10K on the deal, you would offer 116. And then this formula will keep your buyers interested and protect your margins. All right, so just quick MAO formula adjustments. So if it's a hot area, you could potentially move it at 75 to 80% all in. A slow area where there's higher days on market, or a bad area, or it's a frame house in a bad area, you might need to adjust these numbers down more. So maybe it's 65, 68, maybe it's 55, 60. So these are things, as you start to do this more, you'll understand the different neighborhoods and where people are buying and if they're happier to buy at a higher price. So larger spreads or newer buyers adjust down more for that. So just quickly want to jump into the sales side, how we can use comps on the phone. And this is one piece of justifying offers. So we talk about this a lot, but when we make offers, what we want to do is we want to make them based on emotion. We want to solve a problem for the seller, and we want them to understand that we're helping them get from their hell island to heaven island. So that's the basis of our offers. Now, another kind of tool in your tool belt that you can use is using the comps as well to justify your offer. So, you can mention like, hey, a similar home down the block just sold for 235, fully renovated. In our estimation, to bring this up to 2025 standards, it would take 60 grand. So for us, we really need to pick this up around 105, 110, whatever the number is. For us, it's just math. It's not emotion. I wish we could pay more, but unfortunately, this is a number that the team approved. So you can use that to justify your offers and also push back when they start to negotiate, where you can kind of play the game of kind of talking through some of the repairs, or if they were to take care of the repairs, we could pay more. But ideally, we're leading with emotion and not logic. for our offers, but we're using logic to back up the price if they start to push back. All right, so how does comping help with cash buyers? So strong comps either equal a smoother, faster disposition process. So buyers will trust your numbers more when the comps are solid and logical. Buyers feel a lot more confident making offers quickly. So when we talk to buyers, one of the things that they always say is that, like, you guys know what you're doing, right? And you guys know how to comp. You're always accurate. You always price the deals correctly. And a big part of that is we know the comps and we're accurate with those. So it allows us to, one, build trust and rapport with buyers, but also allows us to make better offers so that we know that we're going to make money on the deal. So, obviously the other benefits of that is, like, hey, we get fewer questions. People tend to agree with our comps, so there's not the back and forth of them disagreeing. Now, do some people disagree? Of course, that's natural. But the thing is, if we have strong comps, all we do is we tell them, like, hey, these are the comps. Tell me what you have, and we can talk through things. So obviously, with that, it would support our asking price and our number, because we can say, hey, the ARV is 240, the rehab's 45. You're picking this up at 120. Tell me where the numbers are wrong, right? And sometimes they're just like, I just want to buy it cheaper, and that's okay. But we'll have people who will want to buy at our price because we know the correct number to price it at. It also helps qualify buyers as well. So buyers who understand the ARV and see the spread will take the deal more seriously. So going back to the point, we've had people who offer kind of BS numbers, and we can just tell them, like, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Like, it's not a serious offer the based on the rehab and the ARV. And then also, lastly, it improves our assignment fee potential. With the well-supported ARV and clear comp package, they're more willing to stretch their budget, increasing the margin. Because we might say, hey, we think the repair on this is 45. We say this internally. We typically don't share our kind of estimated repair budget with buyers. We also have, just so you know, we have an inspector who does our inspections, who's also a contractor. So he'll tell us, like, hey, I think it's going to cost about 60 grand to fix this house. So then we have a good idea of what we could price it at and what our MAO is. So pro tip, package comps with your deal blast, show before after photos, highlight sales. So we do some of these things already. So that's all on the dispo side. All right, so practice reps and homework. So I would love if you went through and looked up these 3 properties and comp them yourselves. So what you would do is, one, you'd look up the property, get a sense of what type of property it is, the bed bath count, the square footage, and then you would go and kind of run with that information, go to Zillow or Redfin, and then submit the ARV with the 3 comps and let us know where you think it would be. Final tips, stick to the formula. Don't deviate from it. Don't try to fudge the numbers. We want to stick to facts only. Don't comp with hope, comp with data. So practice equals confidence on calls, right? When you're going through, you're making offers, you understand the numbers, you can talk intelligently to both sellers and buyers, and then great comps are going to equal stronger close rates on the dispo side. So that's it. So let me know of any questions. I'm going to add in a video about comping properties on Redfin in the one slide. But yeah, any questions, just ping me and we can go over the presentation. Thanks.